chances are you've seen one. Maybe on a vacation to Europe, a college history class, or just in a movie. You stand on the cobblestones in a French or English city, craning your neck back, and you just stare. It's a Gothic cathedral. It's a building that seems to defy gravity. A mountain of stone and glass, soaring hundreds of feet into the air. It's overwhelming, intricate, ancient, and perhaps a little spooky. We walk inside, and the effect is instantaneous. We're plunged into a cool, vast space where the only light is a jeweled, mystical glow filtering through massive stained glass windows. We, as modern, awestruck tourists, appreciate it as a masterpiece of art and engineering. We take pictures of the pretty windows. We admire the craftsmanship of the statues. We feel a vague sense of history or spirituality. But what if I told you we're missing the entire point? What if I told you this building isn't just a building? It's a book, a massive stone and glass Bible in stone, meticulously designed to be read by a population that was almost 100% illiterate. What if every statue, every window, every part of the floor plan isn't just decoration, but a carefully placed piece of data? A 3D immersive infographic, a theological comic book that told the entire story of the universe from Genesis to the Apocalypse, to a peasant who had never, and would never, hold a Bible in their own hands. Today, we are learning to read a cathedral. We'll decode its architectural language, unravel its symbols, and understand how medieval builders used revolutionary technology to create the world's most impressive communications device. And we'll ask the crucial question, was this a beautiful, good faith effort to educate the masses? Or was it the most sophisticated and expensive piece of propaganda ever built? First, we have to understand the medieval world. Specifically the 12th and 13th centuries when the great Gothic cathedrals were built. And we have to understand a central problem: mass illiteracy. In our world, text is everywhere. But in 1200 AD, literacy was a rare, elite skill, confined almost entirely to the clergy, monks, priests, bishops, and a tiny fraction of the nobility. For the average person, the farmer, the blacksmith, the merchant, books were non-existent. A single, handwritten Bible could take a team of monks years to produce and was worth more than a farm. So, how did the church, the single most powerful institution in society, communicate its complex, foundational story to 99% of the population? It had two tools. One, the spoken word, the sermon from the pulpit in Latin, which many didn't understand, or later in the vernacular. 2. The visual image, art. The religion for breakfast-style hook here is that the cathedrals we see as art were, for them, primarily information. They were a communications technology, a visual language. But the older style of church, Romanesque, was not very good at this. Romanesque churches were dark, heavy, and fortress-like. They had thick, massive stone walls, because those walls had to support the immense weight of a heavy stone roof. This meant windows had to be tiny, round, and few and far between. They were dark, earthy, and grounded. This architecture was not good for telling stories in light. The church needed a new technology. The Gothic Revolution was, at its heart, an engineering breakthrough. It was a series of innovations that solved one problem: how to build higher and open up the walls. Medieval engineers, in a stroke of genius, developed three key pieces of technology. 1. The pointed arch. Unlike the round Roman arch which pushed weight straight down and out, the pointed arch borrowed from Islamic architecture directed the weight downward more efficiently. 2. The ribbed vault. They reinforced the ceilings with a skeleton of stone ribs, which channeled the roof's weight, not onto the flat wall, but onto specific, strong columns. 3. The flying buttress. This was the masterstroke. This external scaffolding acted like a finger, catching the outward pushing weight from the vaults and transferring it safely to the ground outside the building. What was the result of this? The wall was no longer structurally necessary. The load of the building was now supported by a skeleton of columns and buttresses. This meant the wall in between could dissolve. It could be opened up and replaced with glass. The medieval cathedral is, in essence, a stone skeleton holding up a skin of glass. And this glass became the pages of the book. The theological gold flood the building with divine, colored light was finally made possible by this engineering revolution. So, the new Gothic architecture gave them the medium. Now, what was the message? A visitor to a cathedral like Chartres in France was meant to read the building in a specific order. Step 1, the cover, the facade and portals. You start outside on the main plaza, looking at the west facade. This is the cover of the book, and the title is written over the doors, or portals. The central portal is, almost universally, a terrifying depiction of the Last Judgment. Why? It's the first thing you see before you even enter the sacred space. It's a theological filter. It stops you in your tracks and forces you to confront the ultimate consequence of your life. You see Christ not as a gentle shepherd, but as the majestic, impartial judge. Below him, you see the Archangel Michael weighing souls. To Christ's right, your left, you see the saved, the righteous, being led to paradise. To his left, your right, you see the damned being chained, boiled, and dragged to hell by gleeful, grotesque demons. The message is unmistakable. Your eternal destiny is at stake. Before you enter this holy building, consider the state of your soul. Surrounding this central drama are the cast of characters. Statues of the 12 apostles, the 24 elders, saints, and prophets. They are the cloud of witnesses, the heroes of the faith, reinforcing the story. Step 2, the spine, the nave, and the floor plan. Once you pass this test of judgment and enter, you are in the nave. The very floor plan of the building is a symbol. It is almost always a crucifix. You are literally standing at the foot of the cross. To get to the altar, the Sacred Heart of the Church, she must walk the length of the cross. The architecture forces you to participate, physically, in the story of Christ's journey. You are a pilgrim, walking the path of salvation from the entrance judgment to the altar communion with God. Step 3, the pages, the stained glass windows. As you walk, you are surrounded by the main text, the stained glass windows. These were not just pretty, they were the Biblia Pauperum, the Bible of the poor. Each massive window is in fact a dense, multi-panel graphic novel or comic book. They were designed to be read, often from bottom to top and left to right. An illiterate 13th century peasant could walk into their cathedral, and by simply looking at the windows, they could read the entire sacred narrative. The Genesis window would show the 6 days of creation, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. The Life of Christ window would show the Nativity, the miracles, the Last Supper, the crucifixion, the resurrection. The saints' windows, local, popular saints like St. George, St. Stephen would get their own windows, showing their life stories and martyrdoms. The virtues and vices window, these would be visual ethics lessons, showing pride, a king falling from his horse, contrasted with humility, a monk washing feet. The rose window, the massive, circular window at the end, the transept or beginning the facade, was the grand summary, often depicting Mary in the center. surrounded by prophets, kings, and apostles. It symbolized the entire, ordered, harmonious cosmos, with Christ or Mary at the center of all history. Step 4. The light itself, the anagogical experience. Finally, the light itself was a theological message. The genius of Gothic architecture is not that it's bright, it's that it's dim and colored. Abbot Suzer, the 12th century French abbot who essentially invented the Gothic style with his church of Saint-Denis, wrote extensively about this. He was a Neoplatonist. He believed that physical light was the most direct manifestation of the divine, spiritual light of God. You weren't just meant to see the light, you were meant to be bathed in it. The colored light was anagogical, a Greek word meaning it was intended to lift your mind up from the mundane, physical world to the transcendent, heavenly realm. You were, quite literally, meant to feel as if you were stepping out of the dark, dirty medieval world and into a preview of the New Jerusalem, the heavenly city described in the book of Revelation as being built of pure gold, like clear glass, and adorned with every kind of precious stone. The cathedral, therefore, was a total, immersive, multi-sensory experience. It was a machine for belief, using engineering, art, and light to communicate a complex theological message to an audience that could not read a single word. So, we have this incredible, sophisticated communication system, a building that is a book. But this leads to the central, modern debate. Why did the church pour the equivalent of billions of dollars and generations of human labor into these massive structures? What was the ultimate purpose? On one side, argument A, a profound act of devotion and education. This view argues that the cathedral is one of the most beautiful testaments to human faith ever created. It was a genuine, good faith effort to create a Biblia Pauperum, a Bible for the poor. In a world without books, the church used the only language everyone could understand, the language of beauty, light, and story, to teach the central tenets of the faith. It was an act of communal devotion. Entire townsmasons, glazers, carpenters, donors poured their lives and fortunes into these buildings as a collective offering to the glory of God. It was inspiring. It was designed to lift the hearts and minds of the common person, to give them a tangible glimpse of heaven, a moment of transcendence in an otherwise brutal and short life. On the other side, argument B, an act of propaganda and control. This is the more critical, skeptical view. It argues that the cathedral was, at its core, a brilliant, and perhaps sinister, act of theological and political propaganda. By freezing the biblical stories and church doctrine into stone and glass, the church was presenting its specific, non-debatable, medieval interpretation of the faith as the only, eternal, and divine truth. The illiterate masses could not read the text for themselves. They could not debate its meaning. They could only passively read the official, censored, approved version of the story that the bishops and theologians gave them. The scale of the building, the last judgment on the door, all of it was designed not just to inspire, but to awe and intimidate. It was a visceral, physical representation of the church's immense power and authority. It was a stone and glass declaration that the church was the unchallengeable gatekeeper between the common person and God. So, when we, as modern tourists, stand in front of Notre Dame or Chartres, what are we really looking at? Is the Gothic cathedral the most glorious act of education in human history? A testament to a church that loved its people so much. It built them a multi-sensory, immersive Bible so that even the illiterate could understand the path to salvation. Or is it the most magnificent tool of control ever built? A masterpiece of soft power, a stone-cold argument for a rigid, hierarchical worldview designed to enforce a single interpretation and remind every peasant, king, and merchant of their exact, unchangeable place in God's and the Church's unshakable order. Let me know your thoughts, respectfully, in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the hidden language of cathedrals fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the real stories behind our beliefs and practices. Thanks for watching.